Hello, my name is Charlene Garcia Sims, and I'm the Genealogy and Special Collections Librarian here at Rawlings Library. I want to welcome you to the 7th Annual Latino Book Festival, and I want to thank Maria Smyer for coordinating all of this and all your hard work, and for inviting me to interview Mario Acevedo. Today, we have a very special guest, an author from Denver, as I said, Mario Acevedo. Mario Acevedo is the author of the national best-selling Felix Gomez Detective Vampire series. Most recently, Steampunk Banditos, Sex Slaves of Shark Island, and the young adult humor thriller, University of Doom. His debut novel, The Nymphos of Rocky Flats, was chosen by Barnes & Noble as one of the best paranormal fantasy novels of the decade. His speculative fiction has appeared in numerous anthologies to include A Fistful of Dinosaurs, Straight Outta Deadwood, Blood Business, Nightmares Unhinged, Cyberworld, and You Don't Have a Clue. For 2020, he has short fiction in the forthcoming horror anthology, Wars, and it came from the Multiplex, and a Western novel, Luther, Wyoming. His work has won an International Latino Book Award and a Colorado Book Award. Prior to becoming a professional writer, Mario was an airborne ranger, an infantry and aviation officer, an attack helicopter pilot, and a soldier artist in Operation Desert Storm. In civilian life, he has worked as an engineer and taught art in prison. He also served as a president for Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers and the Rocky Mountain chapter of the Mystery Writers of America. Currently, he serves on the faculty of the Regis University Mile High MFA program and Lighthouse Writers Workshops. Mario lives and writes in Denver, Colorado. Mario was with us for the first festival with Denver author Manuel Ramos, and then the second festival with New Mexico author Denise Chavez. We had a lot of fun, and I'm delighted to have you back in Pueblo, Mario.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's an honor that you invited me again. Obviously, I didn't do anything wrong those other 2 times. So, here I am.
You didn't. So I'm going to be asking Mario some questions, and please pay attention because we're going to be testing you at the end of the program, and there will be prizes. So I was asked to interview you about the books and your career as an author, so let's get started. Your first books are about a creature in the night. What inspired you to create the Felix Gomez character, and tell us about Felix?
Okay, what inspired me to write about Felix Gomez was desperation. What happened was I when I started writing, I thought I'd be writing at first literary novels, and then I kind of sort of morphed into writing men's action thrillers because that's what I like to read. And I had probably written about 7 manuscripts, unpublished, 6 actually. And I had one that I was sure going to get me published. I mean, and it didn't get anywhere. And I was so frustrated that I said, well, the hell with it. I'm going to write the most ridiculous story I can think about, which is a vampire detective, a Chicano, investigates an outbreak of nymphomania at Rocky Flats nuclear weapons plant. And, and the thing is, I really didn't like vampire novels, and that I just decided to write this crazy story. And that's the one that got published, I guess, because it was just so crazy. And the reason I wrote about him is that it just came to mind one day, this idea of this vampire detective investigating nymphomania at Rocky Flats. It's just such a weird thing. And that's the way I think anyway. So, and it came in, so I started fleshing him out. So that's why that's what inspired me. Felix Gomez, I had never read about a Chicano vampire before, so I go, why not? And and I thought in literature and in mass media we have Latinos were always usually criminals, right, or lowlifes, or just maids and service workers, and every once in a while they're lawyers, right, on the TV and stuff, or crooked politicians. So I thought, well, I'll make this guy the anti-hero of a story. Why not, right? I guess it's about time we needed a Chicano vampire.
Okay, thank you. I think the first, not Chicano, but Latino vampire I remember is Banderas, and I can't remember which movie it was. And so when I picture Felix Gomez, I picture him really good looking. So
he pictures himself good looking too. So.
Okay, so we read a little bit earlier that you were a Desert Storm infantry officer and helicopter pilot. Did this influence you to make Felix Gomez a war veteran?
I would have to say yes, simply because if we read the first chapter, The Nymphos of Rocky Flats, that's actually based on something that happened. I didn't see it, but I was with this unit, and it was near the end of the Desert Storm, and everybody was really excited because the war went very well for our side. And something very, very bad happened in these soldiers. Somebody made a mistake, and it really weighed heavily on people. And I remember listening to it, and then the aftermath was going on, and I processed that, and even though that was before it got published, I said, I'm going to file this in my head. It was such a powerful story. So that's why it started with that. I mean, I needed something different to explain how Felix became a vampire. I incorporated some mythology from the Middle East into that. So he's got that, and then of course now that he's a veteran, I mean that part of his personality resonates through the story because that's part of what he is or what he was. So there's that part of it. I was an officer, he was a sergeant. So as we used to say, he used to work for a living as a sergeant. So he's got a little bit different sensibilities than I have. So I just definitely wanted to flesh him out, use a little bit of experience, but if there are other experiences, it's mainly from my observations in civilian life that I pull into his character rather than from the military.
Okay, thank you. And you started him off in Los Angeles, and this is where I thought you were from, and now you tell me you're from Las Cruces. But anyway, why did you move him as a PI from Los Angeles to Denver?
Okay. I know I never really gave a lot of thought to his backstory other than the military aspect of it in the first book. And in the first book, I don't think I remember mentioning much about where he was from and all that. And he just went to Denver to work. But actually, he in the second book, because I had to delve more into who he was and give him his backstory, I explain it in the first book that he's actually, I never say Las Cruces. I just say he's from southern New Mexico. And there were issues with his parents, and his father was an alcoholic, and that he would bounce around from southern New Mexico to Pacoima, California, which is outside of Los Angeles. And so he references that he's back and forth, bounces back and forth between the two. So Felix actually identifies more as being from southern New Mexico than being from Los Angeles, even though he has strong ties on Los Angeles because he would live with his aunt in Pacoima, and big surprise, I had an aunt in Pacoima. So that let me put a lot of touchstones in the story. And then it was just the reason he came to Denver is because he had this old college friend that had worked for him to do at Rocky Flats, and that's how he ended up in Denver.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to prove to you that I read that book.
Okay.
When I lived in Denver, I too, like Felix Gomez, ran into raccoons. What do you recommend a person do when the sun has still not risen and one of these creatures jumps out at you from under your car?
When a raccoon jumps out at you? Well, hopefully you don't let him bite you. I remember that scene. He was escaping, and he ended up going in that culvert, and he got into a slap fight with a raccoon, which is very undignified for a vampire to do. But he had no choice because that raccoon was not yielding his ground. So here Felix, his badass vampire, is getting into a slap fight with the raccoon. So I would not recommend going into culverts that have raccoons in them. So.
Raccoons are not very nice.
They are not very nice. Everybody thinks they're really cuddly and cute, but they are really mean.
They are not. EOS is an imprint of HarperCollins, which is pretty impressive, and that's who published your first book. What steps did you take to sell them your first book? Because they're pretty big.
Oh, yeah, EOS, HarperCollins. Actually, my first book was bought by Rayo, which was an imprint of HarperCollins. And Renee Alegria was the publisher, was the head of the Rayo house. And the idea was for Rayo, which either means underline or line or lightning, depending on how you want to translate that. their plan was that was supposed to be their HarperCollins's venue for Latino or Spanish-speaking, English-speaking writers. And what they would do is that they would get work from overseas, usually from Spain or South America, and translate it into English into the U.S. market. And then at the same time, the idea was to get Latino writers from the U.S. and translate their work into the market. Unfortunately, it didn't quite work out, because it turns out that, for example, here in the U.S., I don't know what it is, but like a Latino writer, and Latinos love science fiction, but when they get science fiction, look for science fiction, they identify themselves as readers of science fiction, not readers of Latino work. At the same time, people who saw themselves as, readers of Latino literature wouldn't go to science fiction. And it wasn't just me. There were some other people like Linda Sandoval who wrote some romance kind of chick lit stories, and she had some of the same issue. So in the year 2008, when they had the big financial crisis, and that hit HarperCollins, and HarperCollins axed Rayo, and they didn't push me over, but they slid me over to EOS, because that's where my audience is in the science fiction market. So go ahead.
Did you send your manuscript in, or how did you make contact with them?
Okay, well, the way I got picked up by HarperCollins was I had been to this route before. I'd finished the manuscript, and now it was going to be the issue of querying and getting query letters and rejection letters, and I had been to that route many times before. So I had gone to the Rocky Mountain Fiction Writers. They had a program on query letters, and it was written actually by a literary agent. So I sat in, and it was very instructive, very insightful, and he talked about the process of query letters and how they're written and all that. And he mentioned that he was representing a zombie novel. And I thought, well, zombies are nothing compared to vampires. So I actually followed him out of that seminar into an elevator, and I actually gave him an elevator pitch in an elevator. And I told him that, I had written a book. I had a Latino vampire detective investigates an outbreak of nymphomania at the Rocky Flats nuclear weapons plant. And I pitched it exactly that way. And he looked at me and he goes, "Oh, that's different." So he gave me his card and he goes, "We'll keep in touch." And we did. And that was in November, I think, of 2003. And then in January 2004, he decided to represent me. And then I think somewhere around, maybe it was like August or September of 2004, he gave me a call and said that HarperCollins had decided to make an offer on the book. So, it took a long time. It took a while. So that's how it happens. You have to get usually you have to get a literary agent, and then the literary agent will represent your book, and they have to query the different publishers. And they have a working relationship with the publishers, so they understand what the publishers are looking for. A publisher might say, I'm really looking for this kind of a book, and hopefully the agent will say, hold that thought. I just happen to have somebody who's writing a book like this. So, it's a
yeah. That sort of answers my next question. How important is it to get a literary agent? So,
well,
I guess the answer is yes.
Well, yeah, I would definitely recommend that, because the alternative would be for the larger publishing houses, the alternative would be what they call sending something in unsolicited, which means it goes into the slush pile. And what they do at the publishing houses, they get this big slush pile of manuscripts, and generally speaking, they actually try to give you a fair shake in the fact that there might be something in that slush pile, and it's happened before. So what they do is that they usually get like the interns and the assistant editors one day, and they have like a pizza party on a Friday afternoon, and they go through the unsolicited manuscripts, and they listen until somebody says stop, and then they go okay, and then they push that aside. But every once in a while they'll be reading a manuscript, and everybody's like, go on, go on, and they'll say, okay, this one we'll pay attention to. But you're talking about like 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 200. I mean, it's a very small amount. Getting an agent, it's, a lot of it is a matter of timing. A lot of it is a little bit a matter of luck. But at the same time, you have, if you're serious about this, you have to write the best book that you can. You have to be aware of what people are, what your audience is going to be. And then you have to be aware of what your agent is looking for, because some agents are looking for specific kinds of work. And if you send them something they're not interested in, you're just kind of wasting your time. So, it is a long shot, but, it's something that you have to do. And the issue of getting rejection, every writer's gotten rejected at one time. So you're just going to have to go through it. Now, the question is, okay, where are you going to find an agent if you live in this area? Well, there are several places. Like Lighthouse has their Lit Fest. And in that Lit Fest, which is in June, what they do is that they invite agents and editors in, and then they have what they call pitch sessions, where you go and you talk to an agent and an editor, and they listen to what you have to say, and if they like what you say, they would invite you to send in your manuscript, and that way it moves you further up the pile. That's at Lighthouse. Regis does something similar to that in their MFA program. The different writing conventions have agents and editors there, and that's an opportunity for you to meet them, sometimes on an informal basis, but it's an opportunity for you to meet them. I just go on, you can just Google, look for a literary agent, and you get stuff that comes up. The one thing that I would recommend to everybody is do your homework on a literary agent, because there are some people out there that are not ethical. If an agent asks you for money, like what they call a reading fee, no, that's a no-go. Do not go with that agent. The agent should also tell you who they've represented in the past, right? So it's a give and take. It's a big, and people tend to be a little bit intimidated when they talk to agents, because they think, well, this agent represents all kinds of big people and stuff. And in truth is that you're the writer, you're the one providing the content, you're providing the material that they need to sell. So you just need to position yourself to best be able to do that. But it's a tough business, okay? I'm going to tell you, it's not easy.
I know, and I'm really glad that you're mentioning the Lighthouse in Denver. I love the concept. Do they have a website?
Yes, lighthousewriters.org.
Yeah, I would recommend that people look at it, because I just love its concept. Thank you. That was really, really interesting.
Well, before we leave that, I think I'll put this on you, is to maybe contact Lighthouse and invite them to come to your library and talk to people about what they do, or have some kind of a mini thing going on. I don't know, but that would be a good way to expose them to you, because they're trying to grow. They've actually grown a little bit more into Boulder and actually into the southern, like the Highlands, Castle Rock area of Denver, trying to reach more writers. And I think that would
I will try to get a hold of them, because we've had writers workshops and everything. I think that would be excellent to come here. So we'll plan on that. So my next question is: has anyone offered you a movie deal yet?
No. I wish. I mean, every writer wishes that, and you never know. It's not even worthwhile expending any energy on it, because it happens when it happens. I've had two friends, one good friend and somebody else that I kind of another writer, and they actually had movie deals made, and it really didn't do much for them at all. You'd think because the movies didn't do well. And I mean, so that in itself is something separate. But then there are other people who, when a book was made out of their movie was made out of their book, it just, exploded. It's like Chuck Palahniuk for Fight Club. Fight Club was sort of this pretty much unknown book until they made a movie out of it, and then now he became very well known, and good for him. He got all this attention and financial resources, and that he wasn't getting. He was a technical writer, and this book just happened to make a big splash because of the movie. So that's always good. I also know a lot of writers who do what they call tie-ins, which is they write if you go to the bookstore, you see movies like about Star Wars or Dune is another one, Star Trek, and you'll see those with the movie tie-in books. So I know writers who write those as well.
Okay, thank you. And maybe we can get either Antonio Banderas or somebody like Antonio Banderas to play Felix at some point. And I do know a real good scriptwriter if you're interested. Well, let's go on to the YA portion of your career. I'm very excited. I'm reading The University of Doom, and I'm just like on page 100. So I really want to get back to it tonight. And this is for young adults. Why did you go from adult literature to young adult, and how different is it to switch?
Here's the book. Well, it wasn't so much that I was looking for a young adult. It was just that the story was in my head. And as I was thinking about it, the market, you have to think about who would want to read it. And I actually, when I was writing The University of Doom, what was going on in my head is like, this is the kind of book I would have loved to have read when I was 13 years old. So that was sort of what was kind of guided that. As far as writing it, the difference between writing for a young adult and writing for an adult market, it's really hard for me to give you any rules. And about the only rule I could say is the protagonist has to be a certain age. And even then you'll find that that's not always true. So in the effect, for example, University of Doom, Alfonso is 12 years old, I think 12, 13. So that makes it actually what they call a middle grade book, right? Because a young adult is a little bit older than that. The other thing is as you're writing that particular book, then you have to be aware of what the issues are going on, right? For example, your protagonist has to be reacting to the world as if they're in that particular age, right? So you couldn't have a 13-year-old react to the world like an adult would, because that you wouldn't, you'd lose the audience, And same thing, somebody who's a teenager looks at the world a certain way. So you have to kind of explore what's going on through their head, and look back at those painful memories when you were growing up, adolescence and teenage years, and kind of mind that. A lot of it is, in those particular years, you're trying to find your place in the world. You're trying to understand the way the world works around you. Sometimes with your authority figures, your adults, you kind of see that they're flawed, and you're going to have to work within that framework. And also, you're trying to think, what does life hold for me? Where am I going with my life? That's very important for young people. So those are the kind of things you work into it. As far as University of Doom, I love conspiracy theories. I love the idea of mad science. And so I really wanted to put that into the book. And things like Frankenstein and these weird inventions. And as if you read the book, you'll see all kinds of things from popular culture come in, like robots, but the old style robots, with very boxy bodies and the wiry arms. I even have Martian war machines in the book because I love the War of the Worlds. The idea of reanimating all kinds of weird creatures and monsters and stuff. So that's something that I wanted to do and have this in the book. But the other thing is, when you're writing a book, any book, it's really about the characters and how they react to one another. So I had a lot of fun with this book. There's the girl, Sarah Baker, and I had a lot of fun writing her because she's very different from Alfonso, but yet she's very smart. She's got a lot of street smarts. And every time the two have an exchange, she always has the last word. And it's not that she's arrogant about herself. It's just that she sees the world differently. And sometimes she sees the world with a lot more clarity than Alfonso does, even though Alfonso regards himself as a super genius. So that I had a lot of fun with that part.
Yeah, I love it. And I really want to comment on this because I was a middle school, high school librarian, and there aren't enough good books for boys, 12 and 13-year-old boys. And I guess this isn't more of a tween book. So there's a real need for books for boys this age. And my grandson is 13, and he used to be a wonderful reader. Now we're having a hard time with him. So I had him read the first 3 pages, and he actually went on to the fourth page, and he says, "Yeah, I would be interested." So I'm gonna get him his own copy.
Okay,
but I want Do you mind reading the first 3 paragraphs
Oh, sure.
to get us hooked here?
All right. Hopefully that goes. First 3 paragraphs. Okay. Chapter 1. A dead badger lay on Alfonso Frankenstein's lab table, but the badger wouldn't stay dead for long. Besides the standard electrodes attached to the creature's neck, Alfonso planned to juice the experiment by sliding a 3rd electrode up the badger's butt. So, so it's very much for boys.
I know that I think that's why he loved it. I could just see him, and I thought usually I have him close after the first paragraph, but no, he went to the 4th page. So thank you. Will there be a sequel to this one? Do you know yet?
I have a sequel in mind. I have a lot of books kind of in my head, in my queue. And as I wrote the book, I actually left some threads open as to characters and plot lines that I could weave into the University of Doom.
Okay, thank you. Are you still going to write adult books? And will there be another Felix Gomez vampire mystery?
Well, I have, yeah. I actually have more books that I want to write, adult stories. I want to write I love crime novels. I love gangster movies, so I definitely want to write something like that. And that's actually what I started to write way back. So there's that. There's a couple of supernatural stories that I'd like to flesh out. As far as the Felix, the thing is, I haven't really thought of an idea for another story to really hook me in. I don't know if you follow the series. The last book, he got switched, and he's in an alternate universe with all kinds of new characters and things, and he's very well placed there. And I'm very happy with the way that particular book ended. But I did leave it open-ended where it could walk into a sequel. I just really haven't thought of what that would be. And once I start writing the book, I'm kind of in it for the next 9 months to a year. So it's kind of like, okay, I don't want to go down that path because I'm going to be on that path for a long time here until it gets done. So that's yeah. So the answer is yes. I have more stories. So
does it take about a year to write how long does it take you to write each book, or are they different?
Well, right now it's taking me about a year. I've sort of, I guess through practice and that, I've gotten a little bit better as to how do I structure the story and how do I apply my time. When I first started writing, I was what they call a pantser, which means seat of the pants, and you just like start writing and see where you go. And now I'm more of an outliner. I sit down and I write a chapter outline. It's about 6 to 10 pages, and to kind of give me a framework of which way the story is going and how the characters react to one another. But then as I write the story, I'm always surprised at what happens. I'll tell you the one that always surprises me are the female characters, because I have the female characters and I start putting them in the story, and I have to really work to keep them from taking over the story. I have to rein them back in. So that's always a lot of fun.
That is very interesting. Very interesting.
Well, it has to do, people, you ever heard that about writers saying that their characters talk to them and the characters take a life of their own? Well, that's true, but it's true in the sense that I guess to be a good writer, you have to be somewhat of a psychologist, and you have to understand how people work and how they react to one another. And then you put people in these certain situations, and to make them credible, they have to act a certain way, and then they have to act on their own agenda. And this is what happens is that if I'm going to put this particular character doing this, they have to be doing that for a specific reason. And then you have to follow through in that reason, and that's how the characters grow and kind of take over the story if you're not careful.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you said that, because I've known a lot of authors that have told me that they sometimes hear the characters that they're developing whisper in their ears. And I think that's really, really interesting. You collaborated with authors such as Richard Kilbourne in Good Money Gone, and Kirk Raber in Forgotten Letters. What do you think of the collaboration process with other authors? Well, it's obvious.
Well, okay. Well, the way that process works, it was actually like a work for hire, meaning both of them had tried to write a novel. They had an idea for a story, and it's a hard thing to do, and it takes you a while to learn. It took me 17 years from the time I started to write a book, and in the hopes of getting it published to actually getting it published. Most people, it takes between 5 to 10. So I'm not a very good, I'm a hard-headed student, I guess. So it took me 17 years, but I got it done. And so what happens is people have this story in mind, and they can either do one of two things. Either they can take the time to learn how to read or write the story, or they can hire somebody else. And they hired me. And actually, there's other books that I've worked as a work for hire. But what happened in these two, that when I got done with the story, or close to being done with the story, the other person, the co-author, or I'm the co-author, the actual author, would approach me and said, I really like the story so much, I want your name on the cover. I want to share credit with you on the cover. So that's how that works. But it's a collaborative process. Some people come into a story, into this process, in a very, very vague concept. They want a story about something, and you ask them, well, okay, who's the character? What is their name? And they're like, I don't know their name. Okay. What do they want? Well, I'm not really sure. What do they want them to do? Well, I want them to do this and this. And you ask, well, why are they doing that? Well, I don't know. And other people have a very structured idea about the story. For example, in Forgotten Letters, cover for it, Rick Raybar actually dreamt about the book, dreamt the opening scene of the story, and it just stayed in his head for years and years. And he goes, I got to do something with it. So then he got with me, and we started working on that. And it turned out that original dream that he had wasn't really working for the kind of story that he had. So we had to kind of change that a little bit. But I would write. I would have create an outline so he understood what the story was going to be, and then I would send him chapters, and then he would reflect on the chapter and give me his edits and that, because it's ultimately his story. And so so that's how that collaboration process works. I have collaborated with other writers on, for example, screenplays. And what we did is we wrote an outline, and then we assigned each other parts of that outline to work on it independently. And then we wrote those parts of the screenplay, and then we would put them back together. And I was astonished how well they actually came together. It's almost seamless. And it was maybe just the fact that I just gotten teamed up with somebody who was in sync with the way I thought. So I was pretty surprised with those other processes. I think the big thing is that when you collaborate with somebody, they have to be as invested in the process as you are. I think if you were to write something and the other person doesn't want to put in the work, or doesn't want to come through with their side of the deal, it's not going to go. It's not going to go anywhere. And you need to identify that up front, because it's going to take you months to a year to write a book. So you're going to be working with this person for a long time. So it's best to get all the kinks and all the rough spots out of the way first before you get into the process.
Thank you. That's really good. What advice do you have for aspiring writers to stay on track and one day be published?
Have faith in what you're doing. Believe in yourself. And the way to do it maybe would be get involved. I mean, what really worked for me, it would be in a writers group, and to choose people that are similar to you in terms of aspirations. I wouldn't advise getting in a writer's book with everybody's already published multiple times and that, because they're further along in the process than you are, and they might resent you having to shepherd you along. And at the same time, you don't want to get involved with anybody who's really not serious about what they're writing. Or if you're writing a certain kind of a story genre, and they're writing something else that's not really jiving, then what'll happen is that your group might try to force them to write their kind of story rather than your kind of story. I guess a good example is that in our group, we mainly write science fiction or crime. There's always a crime element in our stories. So we always liked that. So somebody came into our group and they wanted to write romance stories. And we would tell them, the story would work a lot better if this person killed that person, right? And so that's the way we think. And they're like, no, that can't work because this is the brother to the romance story. And we're like, well, that's better. That's awesome. It's like, no. So you have to be careful about, what kind of advice you're getting, because ultimately you're writing your own book. You don't want anybody else to write your book for you. So it's a process, and you just have to believe in yourself, and stick with it. Get involved in a critique group or a writers group that's supportive, but at the same time gives you the kind of criticism that you need. Set some goals that you can set is a reading. Go to a reading where you get on stage and you read a chapter from one of your books, and just kind of get used to having feedback with people. Another thing good about a critique group is that you get to look at their work as well as they get to look at yours. And people tell you, you got to work on emotion in your story, you got to work on dialogue or whatever. And you're like, well, I kind of think I understand that. Why are they saying the same things? And then you read it in somebody else's work, and you're like, now I see the problem. You see the problem in somebody else's work, and then you realize what you're doing wrong. So it's very instructive that way.
Yeah.
But like I said, just have faith in yourself and keep at it.
That's excellent advice. And so I'm going to have a surprise question for you as a last question. We are having your sister, Sylvia, next week. What question do you think we should ask her?
Well, I could be, I could, she and I think very differently. You could ask her, is it true that that Mario, as your older brother, is smarter than you? Tell her this is the question that Mario asked. Is it true that he's smarter than you? And and I think she will have fun with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Maria Spire is here, so she's written that down, and that's a question we'll ask her. Okay. Yeah,
my sister will answer, oh, he's smarter than me. That's why he's always asking me for money, huh?
So I love your bow tie, by the way. So we're going to have a question which might give you a prize out there. So can anybody answer if Mario is doing a sequel of the Felix Gomez stories? We're supposed to have some people out there, but they're not. They're too shy. They're too shy. They're too shy.
Well, part of it is if they're on Facebook, if you're following this on Facebook, you have to be on Facebook to look at their questions. Yeah. And we're on this StreamYard that this is my first time on StreamYard, so I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. I'll try. Are there any questions from our audience? Because we were going to have a few people that we're going to be wanting to ask you some questions, but we're not getting any. So I'm going to end it there, and we're right on time. Wow, how can that have happened? But do you have any closing comments, Mario?
Closing comments? Well, just thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. There's more Latino writers that I am being exposed or reading their work to, and I'll forward your names maybe for next year. You can invite them.
Yes, we'd love that.
One of the advantages now, we were talking about the advantages, disadvantages of this online conferencing. I mean, one of the disadvantages is that you don't get to see people, the way we want to. But the other thing is, it certainly makes it easier for you to bring people from outside without having all the expenses and stuff. So, and some of those writers are from, other areas of the country. So hopefully you'll be able to invite them and have them here.
Yeah. Well, some people like virtual, some people like, the real thing. So maybe we'll do a hybrid, because I think we need people. We talked about that earlier. So we really do need people.
Let me think here. The thing is that I guess this is kind of a technical one. I'm on Facebook, and this is not showing up on Facebook. the live stream, unless I got it wrong. I just can't find it. So
Okay. Oh, it is. It is.
it is.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have you, and this will be recorded too, so we're really excited about that. So Mario, thank you so much, and
Oh no, my pleasure.
we want you back sometime, and I'm definitely going to take your advice about getting a hold of Lighthouse and see if we can get them out here to give us, because we have so many aspiring writers here in Pueblo, and we just need a little nudge and a little advice. So thank you, and we'll see you next time. Okay.
Okay, you take care now. Yes.
All right.
Bye bye.
All right. Is it out? Are we out?